Hey there everyone, Brian Von VA here. How are y'all doing? I hope everyone's doing well. Today, we're bringing back an old TTS favorite, reborn in fully narrated glory. Today's video is also sponsored by Campfire Blaze, so make sure to check them out too. With that said, let's dive into the deep end, shall we? What are some of the best D&D campaign ideas you've ever had? Part 1. I have been running games for 30 plus years in standard D&D settings and my own. In general, my best campaign I could not really describe in less than a novel. It is a full world campaign for multiple sets of characters covering years of in-game time, and all these plots carefully interact with each other. That said, one of the more interesting and totally blindsided campaign ideas I had was as follows. The party at first level are visited out of thin air by a beautiful woman with large white feathery wings, wearing robes of white trimmed in silver and gold. She told them she was an agent of the deity the cleric and paladin in the group followed. She went on to explain that the world was in danger and deity had foreseen that it was their group whom would be instrumental in preventing the greatest calamity that could possibly occur to a world. This agent of their deity sent them off on many quests, most taking place in the inner and outer planes. At each quest, they were to retrieve something from the plane which could serve as a powerful symbolic and mystical essence of the plane. At the end of each quest, the agent would again appear and reward the group handsomely. Very handsomely. Once all the essences were gathered, they were told they needed to craft something out of them. A model of the world tree, which needed to be crafted on the forge, and with the hammer of Hephaestus. So the group stealthily entered Olympus, by this time they were 14th level or so, stole the smithing hammer of Hephaestus, and crafted this object on his forge. Upon completing, they were discovered by the Cyclops, which aid Hephaestus at the forge, and the group fled. Being generally good, they were not eager to get into a fight in heaven. Finally, they had forged the very thing which would save the world. They were instructed to go to a remote place of power in the world, and there perform a ritual. Upon arriving at this location, they found angelic servants of their deity, among the most powerful, barring their way, demanding the group repent their evil ways and take this last chance to not destroy the world by casting it into the abyss. As the devout cleric and paladin attempted to explain, they were in fact servants of that same deity and trying to save the world, and the angels were telling them that they were in fact enemies. The agent arrived in the company of powerful demons and devils and accompanied by a demon lord whom, as it turns out, is who has been answering the prayers and granting the powers to the cleric and paladin all along. The agent was always an Erinyes, a demon which takes the form of a beautiful woman with feathery wings. The group never once doubted she was an angel. In truth, had they ever used some form of alignment detections, wards, lie detection, or alignment detections, they would have known. During their quests, the acts they had been asked to perform started out in the realm of good, and slowly each one was just a little darker. Slow enough even the players did not realize they were actually doing evil. The demon lord told them of their ruse and asked them to look upon their past to see how he had always taken care of them, had given them power, and treated them far better than any deity would have. So the final act of the adventure was each individual character had to choose sides. The cleric and paladin had it the toughest because it would require them to renounce their powers and become essentially fighters. If they side with the demon lord and his fiends, they would destroy the angels and by using the ritual cast the entire world into the abyss to become a new layer and the 666 layers of the abyss ruled over by the demon lord. If they side with the angels, they would have to immediately have a boss fight against a demon lord, and the angels would have no interest in helping the PCs. Rather, they would focus on getting the corrupted tree artifact from the PC holding it, and then leave the group to its own punishment. If the group splits, they would end up fighting each other and the demon lord and the angels. The big reveal completely blew the players' minds. And thank you, Greek mythology channels, for teaching me how to say certain words. No matter your skill level as a DM, it can sometimes be impossible to stay organized without help. Campfire Blaze is here to shed light on your dark path during times of trial and turmoil. While Pro helped with world management, character development, and relationships to a multitude of events, scenes, and locations and beyond, Blaze aims to improve in all aspects. With user-friendliness in mind, Campfire Blaze comes loaded to the brim with connected features that aims to help you create a brand new world from your imagination, full of life that you can track easily. Craft unique NPCs and characters with intricate backstories, images, and relationships. Stitching together events, timelines, and relevant characters is easy with Blaze. Using world tools, you can flood your world with unique locations and maps while decking them out with languages, species, cultures, and lore that you craft from your very own heart and imagination. With safe storage in the cloud, you can easily access your files anywhere, anytime, even with friends in a real-time environment if you'd like their help as well. Blaze also comes with a modular structure that enables you to pay for only the features you need. So thank you, Campfire Blaze, and here's hoping many DMs come to you to stay on top of the organizational game. I really enjoyed running a campaign that took place entirely within a giant city. The setup had a variety of competing factions that were all intertwined with lots of big, dark secrets. I realized after the game that it would have worked better if I could have been able to incorporate more combat into the game, as I had a couple of players who weren't so happy about that. But I did like the underlying idea that I actually modified from a relatively obscure SCP from the SCP Foundation. The city was basically keeping in an Eldritch abomination. The way the seal worked was that the more people that knew about the Eldritch abomination, the more powerful it became, and the greater the probability it would break the seal. The queen and the high priest of the local church were the only two who knew. However, due to a previous catastrophe, she needed some help and enlisted a fae who she then tricked into being trapped in the city park. He was less than pleased. This, however, started to create enough of a magical rift that the seals weakened ever so slightly. This led to random people, mostly poor people, catching glimpses of things they shouldn't see. And so the queen began memory wiping and or disappearing these people, among other less than pleasant things she was doing to keep her city safe, all the while planning a way to transfer herself into all successive rulers because she didn't think anyone else could keep the city safe. This led to a group of rebels leading an uprising with the Fae subtly directing them. And it was into this world that I thrust my players right at the rise of the rebellion, and it turned out fairly well. Lots of things happened that I did not anticipate. A player started a romance with the rebellion leader. It got really good. She and I were resolving a no we can't be together moment on Facebook, and we were both crying, and ended up killing the Fae. Another player, who was the only guy playing a noble, ended up discovering the secret to this city, while another player was doing everything in his power to discredit said noble player. It was a beautiful, glorious mess of everything. The other one I'm really proud of how it came together is a campaign that took place in Eberron following two other campaigns. The first campaign had a noble attempting to create a war with the creatures of Zoriat. Think the Lovecraftian dimension, but less powerful than like Cthulhu, to bring unity to the fractured nations, and ended up with one of the players taking his Warforged character and creating a nation specifically for the Warforged Axios. The other involved a Kiori plot to eliminate the Kalishtar, two psychic races at war. Then came the one that I told. It started off with cursed items and an attempt to kill the king of Breland, but as the characters investigated further, there appeared to be a group of wizards called the Circle of the Nine who had some nefarious plot. Turns out there was no Circle of the Nine at all, but it was an elaborate ruse put on by several people working together, including a changeling crime boss, a leader of an artificer guild, both of whom were mostly in it for the money, a thought to be missing founder of Axios, and the grandson of the first campaign's villain, but this was not widely known. The last guy, whose name I don't remember, and it was confusing anyway, had reasoned that where his grandfather had screwed up was that Zoriat was uncontrollable. He needed a much more controllable target. He settled on the still fairly distrusted Warforged. Then, he managed to come across the missing Axios person, who was also an artificer named Mender, and managed to warp her thinking. It helped that she had a crush on one of my friend's older Warforged character, Elam. Elam wanted equality for the Warforged. The grandson managed to convince her that equality was impossible, until other people knew what it was like to be Warforged. Warforged. Once the party found Mender, they set her to work fixing the Creation Forge in Axios, a device which could be used to make more Warforged and which technically had been banned. She then set to work making it so that it would shoot out a pulse that would turn people into Warforged. I had no idea how well it was going to work and planned to roll dice to see how badly she screwed up. Meanwhile, the party went elsewhere and thought there was a big bad MacGuffin hidden inside this tower that the crime boss ended up playing off as a big giant game show to see if they could reach the end. They did, and found out their doomsday device was in another castle, specifically the Creation Forge. It was quite amusing listening to one of my friends complaining, "You don't just hide your doomsday device behind a bunch of puzzles. That's not tactically sound." Having finally figured out everything, they managed to convince Mender that it's not what her crush would have wanted, although they just thought it was respect, and also to take care of the grandson who had almost convinced all the other world leaders that they needed to go after Axios. And they did all of this with a party member doing his standard "I'm going to go side with the bad guys" thing he does just about every campaign. I'll note that none of these ideas started out fully fleshed out like this. I just build characters I really like, figure out what they want, and then let them loose and see how they and the characters interact. I'll constantly change or update things that only I know about the NPCs if I feel they fit the story better. I'll create connections as to why certain things happened in a certain way. I've gotten fairly good at it. Both the Queen's memory wiping people and wanting to travel into successive generations stemmed from a particular party member wanting to do things with his character that required a bit more explanation. The first situation was just insanely awkward, and for his sake, I won't go into details, but he wanted an NPC that he had a personal connection to, but we also realized that in order to make sense of how some things had played out, she couldn't really know him, and so she became one of the Queen's victims. The second involving him wanting to change race, class, and gender, but keep the same character, so I made his character a test for the Queen to see if her body switching stuff would work. I don't really do traditional D&D. I frequently use the D&D rules, but I use them for decidedly non-traditional purposes. I've had this idea in my head for years, and I've tried it multiple times under multiple systems. My last two attempts were Pathfinder and D&D 5th edition. The PCs are a group of people who loosely know each other, from the 21st century Earth. They are perhaps extraordinary in their own ways, but nothing the world would notice. By coincidence, they find themselves all at the same subway station trying to catch the same train in the middle of the night. They board the train along with some other people. The only one that stands out is a man in worn, stained overalls carrying a bag of tools. He looks old-fashioned, like a picture of your granddad at Ellis Island, with a thick waxed mustache and a newsboy cap. But he doesn't look like he just got off work. He looks wary, like a caged animal. And it seems like he senses something about the PCs. The train leaves the station and all is quiet for a couple of minutes, until halfway to the next station when an otherworldly explosion derails the train and grinds to a halt. Purple flames burn on the walls and drip from the ceiling, but they are cold to the touch and leave characters' skin dry and cracked. Monsters attack the PCs, horrible creatures that look like raisins on chicken legs, and whose fangs drip burning venom. The man from the subway car helps them fight, kicking the monsters aside harmlessly. Then the PCs see them. Giant humanoid reptiles with snapping beaks, armed with flails and warhammers, wearing the shells of enormous tortoises as armor. The man takes a hammer out of his bag, though it doesn't seem like it could have fit in there, and he tells the PCs to run. The PCs run, taking access tunnels to avoid more of these monsters, climbing down ladders and staircases, downward, ever downward, until they walk through a drainage tunnel and out into a sunlit meadow, and their tunnel withdraws from them and disappears into the sky. They meet a funny little man who looks like a mushroom, who takes them to a wizard who explains that he needs them to rescue a princess before he can help them get home. Except she's always in another castle. Oh, you! Oh, did not see that coming. Brian Vaughn VA here. I hope everyone is doing well, and make sure to check out our sponsor for today's video, Campfire Blaze, a darn useful tool for budding DMs and seasoned veterans alike. Don't forget to like and subscribe, as well as to follow MrRipper on Twitch and join the subreddit r/MrRipper, where you can submit stories of your very own for us to read. Using a help action, you can click that big blue mug and join me, Brian Vaughn VA, on my journey to be just as big as Papa Ripper here. I play games on stream, and I talk about voice actor things occasionally, so drop on by. All the links are in the description below. video. I hope everyone is doing well and that you enjoyed our revived old classic. And sometimes old things can be pretty darn cool, be it a tradition or just a well-worn piece of tech, so never let anyone persuade you into thinking older stuff ain't awesome in its own right. If you got anything old and cool to share, be it a story or something you got from your family or friends years and years ago, please let us know in the comments below, because we're always interested too. With that said, be safe, be happy, and we will see you next time. All the love, and bye for now.